really used a computer, so I don't even know how to do an email. So.
See, it changes so frequently. I say, even though I'm working on a Mac, it shouldn't vary.
No.
A great deal of difference, really.
I did. I've had this. When did I get this? August last year. And I was really tempted to get an iMac.
Yeah.
Really tempted. And I struggled on this, and I thought, Christ, I have to change.
I mean, I use both. So
I'll got that for a shot.
Device agnostic. I can't claim that shot.
You what, sorry?
I can't claim that shot. That's not actually mine.
No?
No, a friend of mine, I tell you, you've heard a guy called Pete Bridgewood.
I haven't, no.
He's got the down the bottom yard at Patchins.
Oh,
where
yeah.
the buildings are. He's got the image gallery upstairs.
Right. I've never been in that bit.
Yeah, he does a lot of...
Very nice.
Does a lot of work. He did a bit of a different way of doing things a while ago. He kind of released a picture and says, process my RAW, and he wanted, because he's really interested in visualization and how people
see it their way. Yeah.
So I took this with me to Patchins because we did the workshops at the Arts Festival this year, and I took that with me along with a load of my shots, and we used it as the example image just to see how different people process, because the original was that one.
Right, yeah.
So it just
really added some colour to it.
Give you an idea of the kind of things you can actually do just to change the image slightly.
Yeah.
Without being too unfaithful to what was there originally. But so what I would normally do is I bring my, as you probably au fait with doing, I bring my images into Lightroom. Again, I tend to use a file catalog system that makes sense to me. I noticed looking at...
the way I do it, a real roundabout way, but it's the only way I know how to do it. I just import them off my card reader, and they go into my Windows photo gallery.
Yeah.
I just drag and drop them then into my hard drive, and then into my D300S folder.
Yeah.
And I know that, and then I'll import them from my folder, off my hard drive to... Photoshop elements, and then I'll do them into Lightroom.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And I find that simplest, easiest way for me, and it might sound good, but for me it works, and I'm used to that system now.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd always say to people, you're doing the right thing there. Don't have your pictures stored on your main PC.
No, which I did before, and hence why I had to get a new one. It was going at a really slow rate.
And I mean, also not only is it just the speed. But what you'll sometimes find is that hard drives have a knack of dying frequently. And if it's within your PC, it gets a lot more hammer than your external drive. So it's...
Well, I've said to myself, I mean, I've had the other one for about a year and a half. That was a 500. And Karen bought me that one for my birthday in February. That's a terabyte one, so much more than I could.
Absolutely.
But what I'm going to change it every year. So I've got 2013 then.
Absolutely.
So I can just keep them, and like you say, you've got backup then.
That's right. It's always the best way to go. What I also tend to do is when I process my files, I'll export them one set into a process folder on my external hard drive.
Right.
And one set onto another external hard drive.
So I've got a double backup.
I've got a backup. Yeah. I mean, I do that with all of them. I've got two 2 terabyte desktop hard drives that just sit on top of each other.
Yeah.
Some people would probably say it's a waste of space, but they've both got exactly the same thing on them. So I know if one fails,
you've still got that.
I've still got it. But yeah, by creating your own folder structure on there, that makes a lot of sense, because you know exactly where your pictures are.
Where they are, yeah.
You've not got to go trawling through all them.
That's right.
You can record things a lot easier and then import them, and you'll find
that's what I do. Yeah.
It doesn't work as the best example on here because I've only imported them for the last couple of workshops I've did.
Right.
So, but you'll notice that Lightroom you can see your folder structure.
Yeah.
So again,
it is. It's quite good actually. Once I got used to that, I got it on a month's trial and that.
Yeah.
Then got my missus to sign. And I had another month, and the first time I didn't really get on with it because I've been using Elements, but then once I found that you can do all these different things with it, it's far superior than the Elements that I had.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a better raw.
But I still do my cropping and spot healing in Elements.
Mm.
So can't get on with the crop tool in that, and I don't like the healing brush how it flips around.
Ah, yes.
So I just transfer it back over. Once I've done it, export. It's in the folder, and I just re-import it back in out the 300S folder as it's called.
Yes.
And re-import it back to Elements.
Yeah.
You can do that. That's all right
absolutely,
to do. You can flip them back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I flip between.
There's a couple of bits I still like to do in that, you know.
So I'll just basically pick one of my images to start with. So this is literally out of camera, no processing on it at the moment at all. Okay. Obviously, you shoot in RAW?
Yeah, shoot
so
RAW.
You'll notice when you get them on the PC, they look a little bit flat.
They do,
what you recall. So that's just purely the RAW process and the fact that it's lacking in contrast, lacking in sharpness, and the colours are a little bit muted. I didn't use my stopper on here, but I was shot the lens probably at 24mm, and it's widest, so I've got a little bit of vignetting. I was using a graduated filter on this one as well.
Yeah.
So what you'll find, and I don't know whether you use this, don't do a great deal in this section at all.
I don't touch anything in that bit.
Sometimes I'll have a look, and I always say to people, don't be kind of snobby about using some of the auto settings, because Lightroom's getting really good now. So what I will tend to do is work my way through my light balance.
Yes, I do on my landscape, in most shots actually, and see what it comes up with.
And it varies. Sometimes I'll find something that was closer to what I had on the day, and sometimes I'll actually think, well, actually, it did a good job. So, I mean, today I'm going to keep this one ash shot.
Sure, yeah.
It's not a great deal of difference to shade, which did. I don't really. The location was a place called Boggle Hole, which is just down from Robin Hood's Bay.
All right.
It's literally, when the tide's out at Robin Hood's Bay, you can walk around the headland to Boggle, or you can walk over the Cleveland Way and there's a big youth hostel there.
All right.
Big old steep road and an on-ramp. There's literally all there is at the bottom, and then rocks and a couple of caves and things. Right. Excellent location. And I've been about 8 times, and only ever once had the sunrise exactly as I wanted.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
So what I'll do, is move in to the develop module. I like the way Lightroom works very sequentially.
Yeah.
And then again works sequentially downwards.
Yeah, I do work down.
What I tend to do first though is I'll always move down to my profiles, and mine looks very slightly different because this is Lightroom 5. But
is this the 5?
Yeah, there's a couple of extra bits in this.
All right, yeah, it's usually enable and you remove chromas up a bit.
So I always enable because that.
You do use that, do you? That first?
Absolutely, because what that does, all the camera manufacturers, when they create the lenses, they send out a profile to Adobe, which basically tells them what corrections are required to correct for the barrel distortion and small amount of chromatic aberration that the lenses will get just because of the construction of the glass components.
So you'd recommend to do that before you actually start? So I've tried it as I've edited down.
Yeah.
And it sort of brightens everything up, and it.
Absolutely, I use it as a starting point because then you'll notice sometimes if you've got a slight curve, it corrects that straight out, and then you know that any cropping and editing you do is actually based on the full profile rather than doing it and then changing it and finding that you didn't like what it did.
Yeah. Okay, no.
Now the remove chromatic aberration, that's where you get like the colour fringe around things. You can do that now.
You can do that at the start before you've edited.
Or you can do that later after you've edited, because you'll sometimes.
So that's usually down at the bottom. So that's one of the things I do.
Absolutely. What you sometimes find is as you edit, you can inadvertently introduce a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. I thought. Yeah.
So I have a tendency. If I know I'm doing a fair amount of editing, I'll switch it on a little bit later.
Okay.
But certainly the profile is something I'll bring in right from the start. And then I'll move my way back up.
Unless you're looking for a bit of a warped sort of perspective.
Absolutely, that's right. I mean, the other thing...
A lot of my shots, I tend to go for a bit of with me 10 to 20. Now I'm looking for that. So I wouldn't use that on that. But on a landscape, yeah.
That's right. I mean, absolutely. Sometimes I even find it quite interesting to change the profile completely.
All right,
and flick it to something, another lens completely. So if you have a really artistic impression,
you could, right.
Or, you can flick it onto a fisheye lens and get a completely different feel to your image.
All right.
So,
right.
personal preference.
Yeah.
So then I'll work my way up to the top, and what I tend to do, the first thing that I always do is kind of try and look at the horizon.
Yeah.
And try and work out, if I want it straight, is it a perspective shot? Was there other things that are going to look odd? I don't know whether you use the angle tool ever.
A straightening element.
Yeah, I mean, I found in Lightroom, literally just click, come across your horizon.
Straighten them up, yeah.
And then press enter.
Oh, and it crops as well.
And then what that does is it constrains the image, so it'll straighten it and just crop it in very slightly, so you don't get any dead areas.
Right.
So that'll give you a really good starting point from that perspective. Again, if working in the field, I think I had a 0.6 grad on here, just over the sky to handle the brightness. But I know there's a lot of people who don't always carry them with them.
I do. I always use my. I've got mine's a 6.2 stop.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but you can introduce one. I don't know if you ever use the graduated.
Yeah, it seems to be a miss with me though. But
and again, I do sometimes use it for creative effect. Depending on what I'm looking for. So again, once I'm in this module, what I'll tend to do is I'll look at my colour as an overall selection. So I'll look at my white balance.
Yeah.
And what I tend to do is I select the colour dropper here.
All right.
And what I'll look for is a fairly mid-grey area. So that tends to be what the camera looks for anyway. And what I'll do then is just click on it, and that'll just flick the white balance using the mid-grey as the centre point.
All right.
So what it's done there is it's just warmed my tones up a little bit in the sky, and it's carried that mirroring it on down to the image and kept the blues. It's easy just to see what you've done to it. You can just
you can undo.
Edit, undo. And you just
see
the difference it's made.
Select your tool. I've never seen that be used before.
So I find it a really good tool.
Click on that.
So it's literally just click it, and you hover over, and this is going to show you the colours available. It's really good if you're doing an image, so you're shooting a night shot, and you want it to be a colour one. You've got a lot of sodium lighting in the scene. If you can find something in that scene that you remember as being either white or mid-grey, just select that, and it'll correct in an instance the actual yellow cast that the chrome light gives you.
I see, yeah.
So once I find the mid-grey, just find one I'm happy with.
All right, instantly, yeah.
And it just changes it. I mean, you can play with it and
with
actually
your temperature,
drag your sliders, and I will sometimes use them for creative effect.
Yeah, to do. I'll do that sometimes. Yeah.
And they're saying you can.
Seems to have done it there, though, didn't it? Just with
absolutely. If I'm going for a landscape shot and I want that shot and I want it fairly faithful, I'll tend to use a very targeted approach.
Oh right, okay.
And you still got all your options in here as well.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Work my way down. So, and again, what I tend to do is I'll try and remember back to what it was like on the day. So, do I want it fairly as it was, or do I want to make the scene different? Now, what I tend to do in camera, I don't know if you've heard a concept called shoot to the right.
No.
It's when we take images out in the field. Do you review your histogram on the back of your camera?
Not very often. Sometimes.
Yes.
But more often I'm just looking at what I've got.
Yeah. What you'll find is the JPEG that the camera shows you on the back is a very quick approximation, a fairly low resolution, and I don't find it that overly trusting.
Right.
In terms of, if you use your histogram, which is exactly the same as what you get represented on here.
Yeah.
What we tend to do is obviously your left hand side is your shadows.
Yeah.
Your right hand side is your highlights.
Highlights. Yeah.
The last sort of 30 to 40% on this side contains actually around 60% of the image's overall data.
Right.
So what it does is it drops off exponentially. So instead of increasing double, it actually decreases double.
Yeah.
Within the PDF, I've actually got a fairly good presentation showing you this in graph form and how it actually works. But the number of colour and light values that you get, this end is your key end.
Yeah.
So in terms of shooting to the right, what we say is even if you want to take an image and you want it to be dark and moody, the image that you capture in camera is always to try and make it push the histogram as far to the right as you can. So this data here without it clipping the right hand side.
Right. Okay.
Now, when you review it on the back of the camera, it may look a lot brighter than you want it to look. But when you get it back home onto the PC, you'll find out, number one, it won't be as bright as it was on the camera.
Yeah.
Because you'll be looking at the raw.
Yeah.
But what you've also got is more latitude then, because you've captured that extra, or more in that 60% area of data on this right hand side. In terms of your editing capabilities, you can do a lot more with it in terms of dropping the shadows, dropping the highlights, raising the shadows, bringing colour back, bringing light back, bringing detail back. So that's why the concept of shooting to right was kind of, a lot of people talk about it.
I've never heard that, but yes, I can see benefit of that, definitely.
So I mean, what I've done here, and I think I probably would have, when I process it, I'd probably go for a slightly darker look. But what I've tried to ensure that there's data as far right as I can go without it clipping off the edge of the screen.
Right.
Again, so I know. My personal preference maybe would be a darker image, but what it gives me is the best raw file I can get with the most amount of data.
Yeah.
And comparatively, what you'll find, if you actually a good way of actually looking at it, if you take a picture and use your screen image as a guide, and then take one and use your histogram as a guide and shoot to the right, you'll probably notice anywhere between 0.5 meg and 3 meg difference in file size.
All right.
And that is purely to do with the amount of data it's captured at this end.
On there, yeah. All right.
So that's where I'll always come out with a slightly brighter image.
Yeah.
Which then I can apply my creative thought to actually on the camera. So if I want to make it darker, I can drop it back a bit. And you'll be well versed with using these sliders.
Yeah.
You always find
push the contrast up.
Plus the contrast up a little bit. I never go too mental. A couple of things I normally do, and this works on Lightroom 4 or 5, is your whites and your blacks. Now again, to get a really good contrast, you've come across it on Elements or anything you've done reading on, is you get what they call a white point and a black point. So that's like your whitest whites.
Yeah.
And your blackest blacks. And if you can get that if you can set those 2 points, everything else should be relatively well spread. Now in Lightroom, what you'll tend to find is that you can actually press a button on here.
I know the trick you're going to show me.
The alt one.
And then you drag him back until you bring in some pixels in.
Yeah.
And you do it either side.
Yeah.
Not too sure how much. I do that on my images.
I mean, that's perfect. I mean, what I tend to do on
it blacks your picture out, or it'll white it out.
It does.
And then,
so I'll do my whites, and what I tend to...
Do you watch your histogram for that, or just have a look?
I do a little bit of both, and what I tend to do on the whites...
Just get it going up there.
I'm going the wrong way. I'm not.
No, I didn't see any pop out there.
There isn't. You'll tend to find that you can...
there you go.
What the whites I tend to do a lot less than the blacks.
So just get it so you're just getting a couple. That's what I usually do.
Just peeking through.
So that does really help with the contrast, don't it?
That's right. And the blacks, I tend to go that little bit further.
Yeah.
So you get a couple of really solids.
Yeah, that's made it.
If I'm not happy with it, I'll literally just go into it
and
bring it back.
Yeah.
I mean, that gives you, in terms of the dynamic range across the
I watched a bit of a tutorial on this, and that bloke who does it, he drops his highlights right across and shadows right across.
Would that be a French guy?
Yes.
Serge Ramelli.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does some cracking stuff.
Yeah.
He's more of a retoucher, isn't he, than a traditional.
But yeah, it does work though, don't it? It's
it does.
Effective.
I mean, and that again, the ability to actually do that. Anybody who shoots in JPEG, and there's a lot of people who do, and you will find that you've got a lot less latitude. And again, if you've actually shot your RAW file to the right slightly, again, using all this dragging technology, you've got a lot more leeway and a lot more work.
I'll be checking my Instagram a lot more after this.
I mean, it is just to say I
do look at it when it's on here, but not so much on the back of my camera, to be honest. I'm usually looking at me, seeing what I've got on screen.
Absolutely. I mean, I the only thing I use my screen for on my camera, as daft as it sounds.
Not your horizon level, is it?
Yeah.
I've got that's what I use it for. I click on my live view a lot. And just level up. I use that.
Absolutely. I use it for leveling, but I'll also use it for focusing.
Oh, you use it for? I've never used it.
Because what I tend to do is I use hyperfocal techniques. I don't know if you've ever used those.
No.
You can get, depending on your lens, you can get a hyperfocal chart, which is basically, the concept of that is that you've got each lens that a manufacturer brings out has what they call a sweet spot. It performs best within. Now, what a lot of magazines will tell you is to get greater front to back sharpness is you push your aperture number. So you decrease the size of your aperture, and they kind of start saying, f16, f18, f22 will give you greater front to back sharpness. Actually, using hyperfocal techniques, you can get as good front to back sharpness shooting closer to the lens's sweet spot, which is normally between f8 and f11.
Yeah.
I very rarely, unless I'm actually trying to lengthen my exposure time, use f16, f18, f22.
To get your longer shutter speed.
So I tend to use the hyperfocal techniques. What I'll do is, if you log online, there's a piece of software which is free called DOF Master, which will allow you you put your lens details in and it'll print you a graph out. And similar to your exposure chart, it'll have your apertures and your focal length. And you just read across and it'll tell you at that given point what the hyperfocal distance is. And depending on what type of lens you've got, some of the lenses, and the slightly more expensive ones, have a little window on top, which has a hyperfocal scale on it. I don't know whether you've got one with that on.
Yeah.
If you have, you can focus without even looking through your viewfinder.
So you can do it on.
So you literally.
Your infinity to closest focusing. Is it that one?
Yeah, normally, and that will move across. So basically, you look at you set your focal length, so you set your zoom you want to work to, you set your aperture and everything, you read across your shutter and your aperture range, and you have a look at distance, and you find your hyperfocal point based on that graph. You can then literally just use the focus ring to tweak the focus to that, how many feet or meters it is. And that's basic. Normally, and this is another common technique that people do, it's normally, give or take, a reasonable amount of tolerance, about roughly a third of the way into the scene. And you can pretty much, with utter confidence, you can focus without even looking through your thing using the hyperfocal technique.
What's that one called? What's the site?
It's a site called DOF Master. It comes up on Google. They've got a little tool you can download.
I'll look at that one. That sounds good actually. Yeah.
If you've got lenses, because I think I've got 3 lenses with a hyperfocal window on them. And
I'm sure that'll suit me. I know this has a light house.
Yeah, absolutely. So again,
if I punch that in.
So it's just tweak that so it actually matches what the hyperfocal distance is.
Right, okay.
And that'll get you pretty much within
your sweet spot here.
Yeah, with it, so you can actually then get front.
Yeah, because I usually f16 as a rule of thumb for me, unless I'm trying to get a longer shutter speed, then I'm up to the f20.
That's right. So what you might find there is that you can push the aperture slightly wider.
Yeah, all right.
So you can get it down to f11.
Yeah.
Maybe in down, and still get the same front to back detail sharpness.
All right, that's good.
If you've got lenses without that on,
they've all got them on them.
They've all got that on.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've got my little nifty 50, which is Canon's cheap.
Yeah.
50mm f1.8. The missus has got she's got Nikon.
Yeah.
And she's got the f1.4.
Yeah, that's what I have.
With the hyperfocal on. But I don't use my 50 enough to justify it.
I don't use mine.
And this is where I'll use my live view on. But I will also use it to double check my focus on hyperfocal. So what I tend to do is once I've set my hyperfocal distance on my focus ring, switch live view on. I'll zoom. I'll have a look at the scene as a whole, and I'll work out the key elements that when I've made my composition. So say if I've got rocks here,
you'd be looking at them and looking at those. You can zoom in on it.
Yeah, you've got your plus and minus.
Use that to focus.
I'll zoom in, and I'll check my focus at this area.
Yeah.
So within this scene, I would, if you kind of look at it in a 3-dimensional format rather than look at the screen, that give roughly a third of the way into the actual overall scene. It's probably that rock there.
Yeah.
Just under the water. So what I would have done is I've zoomed in on that.
Just to check that.
And I'd check what the focus is like on that. If I'm happy with it, I'll zoom back out again, and I'll then move to that one because that's quite an important piece of the composition. Yeah. I'll zoom in, I'll check, and again I'll move up to the horizon as well and see what it's like. If there's parts of the scene that aren't as tightly in focus as I'd like, I'll zoom back. I'll come back down to the bit that I want, and literally in live view mode. And this works really well with your with a big stopper on as well, because you can actually that will give you an approximation through.
It will.
Yeah, because what live view will tend to do is unless you press the depth of field preview button, which is normally kind of just under the lens.
Yeah,
What live view does, even if you've got your aperture set at f16 or f11, it will stop it all the way down to its widest point. So it'll give you a view at f3.5 or whatever your lens is. Yeah. So invariably that lets a little bit more light through. So you can actually do your focusing
through your live view with a big stopper.
With a big stopper on, which is an absolute treat. What I'll then do is once I've got everything in focus that I want, and sometimes I'll decide, well actually I can get this in focus and I can get this in focus, but I'm losing a little bit of detail out here very slightly, is that gives you the creative choices whether you actually change your aperture very slightly to give you a little bit more depth. So perhaps go from f8 to f11 at that point.
Yeah.
Or f11 to f13. I always try and keep it as close to the sweet spot as possible.
As you can. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Again, I just go through the whole process again, just zoom in, check my focus on each point. Once I'm happy with it at that, then I know that I've got my starting point, I've checked all my focus options, I can then shoot. What I will then do is my depth field preview button, I'll hold that down, and I'll go back to my key zone, so my third of the way in roughly approximation of the hyperfocal zone, and I'll zoom in with the depth field preview on, so that's when it doesn't work with the stopper on, but it works with your sort of two stops.
Yeah.
Keep the depth field preview held on, zoom in, and then I'll just check that sharp when it stops the lens to the appropriate aperture.
Yeah.
If that matches the focus that I've just checked, then I know everything else will be right. Again, if it's not, I can just tweak it very slightly and review everything else.
Oh.
And again, it's just initially it seems like it might take ages.
No, once you're
you'll find once you've done it 4 or 5 times, you literally perhaps take 2 or 3 minutes to take a shot.
Yeah.
Maybe 5. But that also has another advantage, I think, sometimes, that it slows you down a little bit.
Yeah,
As
I do tend to rush. I get a click at it.
I always tell the missus, she's a bugger for it. She'll go down. She'll moan at me because I'll perhaps spend 15 minutes walking around before I can get my camera out.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of little tools that I use. One's a piece of cardboard that's been laminated and just cut out with a... I've got one with a sort of wide angle, one with a standard view, and one with a square.
So you can actually offer it up and see what you get.
Yeah, and before I get the camera out, I'm kind of just trying to work the compositions out. You can get a variable one off the internet, I think, from Amazon. I think it's called an artist's image finder or something like that, with a little slider in it.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
No, it's a good idea though, yeah.
And I find them really good. I mean, the other advantage there is the grey as well. They're a mid-grey, so you can use it to set you can use it with your camera to actually set the manual white balance based on the light in the area. And they're about £5. Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, the missus, she's moaning at me because I take ages, and she's kind of shooting away. But I perhaps come back from a shoot with maybe 20, 30 shots.
She got 200.
2, 3, 400. And there's not a right or wrong way of doing it. It's just how I prefer to. Because I've shot film in the past.
So you've got to take your time.
And you had that investment in that each frame was worth.
Yeah, obviously.
Worth money to you, sort of thing. Especially on 120 format when there's only 12.
Oh, crikey, yeah.
12 per roll of film.
What a luxury digital for you. I mean, I've
absolutely.
Never really, little snapper when I was younger, like that. But yeah, never really. I didn't start till.
But yeah, anything that you can just slow yourself down a little bit.
I'll get to the loop.
Absolutely. Okie dokie. Right, so we've set the white and black points, which gives me a nicer contrast.
It does, yeah.
I'll then return maybe to the exposure, and I can either look at it as a whole, or I can actually work with different parts of the image. So the overall exposure I quite like. At the moment, what I might do is once we've been through the stuff that affects the image globally, is actually kind of paint a bit of light onto the rocks, just to give them a bit more definition.
Yeah.
I'll move down. As you'll find, if from watching sort of Serge's videos, clarity can add, especially to images.
I usually do, even in elements. I used to bring in some clarity.
It's really a nice tool for just adding a little bit of definition to rocks and things, to buildings, and creating a nice sort of balance on the image. So I'll just click, and again, I won't push it too far. You do find that it kind of alters the colour balance of the image very slightly. So what I might find I do is I bring a grad down onto here now.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot.
To increase that much though. Is that so? This is 5.
I mean, yeah, I find it's a lot more it's a lot more responsive, just at little points. Yeah, and I tend to find that you don't need as much as you might have used before. You notice how much just bringing it up raises the brightness of the image. So I tend to take it up to about 2. I'll then probably think about bringing a grad down because it's really pushed that right to the edge. If you hold, I don't know, you do this. If you hold your mouse over that, it'll show you clipping. Yeah. So I can see where I've clipped very slightly there. Then move down. Now another, if you don't use black or white points a lot, another way of actually dealing with your contrast is obviously the traditional way, where a lot of people say that most photos are represented quite well on a contrast level with a nice sort of smooth S.
Yeah.
And again, in Lightroom, you can literally just pick a point on the graph and drag it up. I tend not to do both. It's literally one or the other.
Yeah.
So I'll move my way down now. And I'll tend to come into the area now where I'm working specifically on the colour within the image, and this at the moment is an overall amount.
Yeah.
So it's whether I want to actually work on the image as a whole or on a micro level. Now I think I'm relatively happy since we changed the the actual white balance of the image, that the overall colour is quite pretty much in the zone I want it in. So I'm not going to change that too much, but I could if I want. The other thing I tend to do is my sharpening. This is your, if you use the nick tools, there's two sharpening processes. You've got raw sharpening, which is like your pre-sharpening, and then your output sharpening. And your output sharpening is where you sharpen for a specific purpose. So you can sharpen for different types of paper or for screen. So what I tend to do on here, because obviously a raw file that comes in is quite flat, I tend to find that the radius that it sets as 1 can be a little bit too harsh.
Okay.
And that's just the kind of the difference between where the sort of micro detail of the sharpening. So what I tend to do, and this is personal preference, I drop that down to half.
Right.
And I look at my sharpening. So what I tend to say is I'll look at the image and sharpen it as a whole. So I'll kind of get the sharpening up, and it varies from image to image. I'm probably going to go about 77. Again, it's just brought out a bit more detail, definition in the rocks. But what I don't want, and this is just personal preference, but I always think if you look at nature, that skies and waters don't tend to be particularly sharp. You do a lot of the long exposure, so you like the smoothness and the milkiness.
Yeah.
And this might be a technique, again, that you've seen before, but if you hold your Alt key down on your masking for sharpening, the white screen means that everything's sharpened to those settings.
Right.
If I drag this back, everywhere that's black goes unsharpened.
All right.
So I'm going to mask out, literally, the majority of the water. So
it's just the rocks that are left.
So it's the rocks at the front, the horizon line, the rocks in the middle, and then a little bit of detail on the edge.
Oh, right. I've never used that masking.
I'll let go. And what's that now done for us? It's applied the sharpening to everywhere that was white.
To where you expect it to be, really, on that one.
So again, if I'm working with sky or water, it just takes the sharpening off the areas I don't want it on. Right. That works in Photoshop as well. Not tried it in Elements, but it certainly works in Photoshop in the camera raw setting.
Right.
Yeah. Then move my way down a bit, and this is where I'll tend to then apply the chromatic aberration.
Chromatic, yeah.
I don't think there's a great deal in here. I will kind of zoom in, just have a close look. Can't see masses, even at the edge of the rocks and the water.
No, it's nothing really, is it?
And that's possibly a kind of an artifact of how well the 5D Mark II seems to handle colour and light.
Yeah.
Clicky, it is a very good tool anyway.
Oh,
what I'll do anyway now is I'll move back up, and now I'll start working on areas of the image that I want to work on a more targeted approach.
Yeah.
So what I might decide I want to do is that we've actually overbrightened the sky area very slightly. So what I tend to do is I'll drop my grad down, and I'll use the midline on the horizon. So,
right, so you'll pull your actual point to the horizon line.
Yeah, I mean you can work on multiple.
So if you just wanted to do the sky, what would you do? Just pull it down to the horizon line, or
what this will do? I mean, if you just want to do the sky, you could have the bottom line on the horizon, but what you find is that the top
will be a lot darker,
will be affected more. So what I tend to do is bring it down so the midline is on the horizon.
Is on there, so you're getting that dark and it's going as it is a grad.
Yeah, and then what it'll also do is it applies a little bit, but not as much, of the reduction in brightness to the water and the light that's reflected on the water. So you get a more balanced version. And it's literally from here you're working on a micro level, so I get it.
Oh, that's a lot.
Roughly where I'm happy with it. So about there, I think. And again, here you can actually target your highlights as well. So I can drop my highlight.
Just tone them down a touch, get rid of that. Yeah.
So I mean, depending on the image, some will take a lot more toning than others. So
yeah.
I mean, that one's taken 100%.
Really
and what
good
you can
effect.
see if you click on there,
you see the before and after.
Yeah, and one of Serge's favourite.
Oh,
Before, after.
Yeah, I've got to admit, it is very good, isn't it? Yeah, that's a whole lot of difference.
Quite a big difference it'll make to it. So I'm quite happy with that at that point.
Yeah.
What I also use, and this is very similar to working in Photoshop, is your brush tool.
Brush, yeah.
So do you use that much?
I do a little bit, yeah.
I find it really good for painting light and painting colour into a scene a little bit. So what I'll tend to look at here is I'm probably going to look at just a little bit of light into these rocks just to brighten them a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So I'll probably just raise the exposure very, very slightly. Not masses.
Yeah, just to give it a little bit of a lift.
I tend to find it's easier not working on the touchpad. But I've got a graphics tablet I use at home attached to the PC.
Are they any good? Or obviously
they take a little bit of getting used to, but in terms of once you've got the mindset of how your pen works on the screen, in terms how the micro detail and control you've got is a lot more than a mouse. It's really, really pinpoint. So we've painted that in there. I'm quite happy with that.
That's looking really good.
I'll then look at the image now and just give an overall look, and I'll have a quick look around, and this is where I'll perhaps use a spot healing brush for any.
Yeah.
Because I've got a heck of a dusty sensor. It seems to be a thing by going to locations which are beaches and things like that. You can't do a great deal about it.
No, that's right.
There aren't too many.
No, I say you're not doing too bad.
Up this side. I mean, what I have got is there's a hair on my sensor which I've still not got around to getting the blur out, which tends to leave that on all of my shots. Now you've got two ways of taking that out. You can use your spot healing brush and set the size accordingly. I always have it on heal, obviously, rather than clone.
Clone, yeah.
It's literally size just right, and I find number 5 is very good for making a really good approximation, and it can pretty much look at the pixels.
What's that number?
Lightroom 5.
Right.
It seems to be the healing tool seems to be very, very good. It's very close to the.
Get used to it. I'm used to it. It's the way it samples a piece on the elements.
Yes.
You just put it round it and bong, it's gone.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no other bit that jumps round, if you know.
No, that's right.
Get used to that.
I mean, that circle. If you're working in skies and you select slightly the wrong area, that circle you can just move.
Yeah, you can drag it round, can't you? Yeah.
And another way of doing it, and so I'll undo the spot removal so it's back in. Let's go to Photoshop, and I'll flip it out to Photoshop, and this is where I'll use a tool that they've got in Photoshop called the lasso tool. There's about 3 or 4 ways of doing it, and different people do it different ways. Some people use the spot brush and kind of for dust spots, and would drop a spot on and then actually change the actual opacity of the brush. Right, so we'll just wait for this to load. Pushing the Mac a bit strong because I've got the video recording software takes a little bit of power as well as.
I bet, yeah.
Although saying that, the Mac's 5 years old, and I think a 5-year-old laptop would probably have fallen over by now.
Oh yeah, Windows one would definitely.
Yeah, I've had.
I'm tempted for one of these, but it's
There's
just the operating system that I'd be. I think it's like anything. Once you've been using it a while, isn't it? You just.
Absolutely, it doesn't take a great deal of getting used to. There's a few things which are very slightly different, but once you actually get used to them, there's a lot of things which are really, really kind of logical and common sense, and you actually think that applying with Windows complicated that.
Yeah, sometimes do think with the technology that's in there, why overcomplicate it all?
So I literally go on to view when it catches up with me. Initially, I'll fit on screen. That's Command Plus, isn't it? So we'll zoom in, and I'll find the area that I want to actually highlight. Yeah, we'll use the lasso tool. Select around it, edit, fill, and there's a tool in Photoshop called Content Aware, which will basically look at that area I've selected, sample the whole image, and work out what's the best replacement for it. And that's what the brush in Lightroom 5 now uses technology-wise. Is very similar to the Content Aware tool.
Yeah, so it's...
So now view on the screen, and I tend to find that does a pretty good job of taking it out.
Oh yeah.
File.
You just have to cut people, I think.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. The brush that there's a couple of brushes which will literally let you draw a path. You don't have to select a circle or a square or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can literally go around a person, or one that I found it was really useful on Whitby. And the sort of the shambles area and where the cobbled streets are at the top end. I wanted a really nice oldie-wildy street shot. So I got there really early in the morning, got a nice black and white shot I was really pleased with. And I looked down the street and thought, satellite dish, burglar alarm, telegraph wires. And I spent ages. But
just getting rid of them all.
Does a really, really good job of sampling them out and replacing them with what you want in the image.
I know, and do need to take more time editing my images as well. I tend to just rush it and get back from a shoot and I've got a good shot that I think, oh, it's brilliant. 10 minutes later I've got it on Flickr, instead of spending a bit more time on them. Yeah. Sometimes I do.
I mean, I'm always an advocate, although we'd probably spend about an hour going through the process. You'll find...
No, I've picked up a few good tips here.
The process I use, I probably spend no more than... Most images, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Easy.
I think as well, once you go into that routine,
definitely.
It's pretty...
Most things you'll find work pretty much across most images, and it's just a case of varying the amount that you actually use.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So I've moved back over, I've done my dust spotting, I'm very happy with my colour balance. Don't need to change anything else. I've done my sharpening, and I've masked out the sea and the sky, so that's given me, I think now I've masked out the sea and the sky, that creates more of a three-dimensional feel.
It does, yeah, a lot more definition.
It almost feels like you could kind of drop off those rocks.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't realise about that masking until when we write that out about that masking and the details on the masking into.
Again, it'll be captured in the processing screencast, so you'll see exactly what I've pressed, so you won't have to remember what we've done.
That's a bit like a Sir Dramedy sort of.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'll sometimes add a bit of vignette if I want to focus the eye in.
Yeah.
I don't tend to go too mental, probably about there, kind of just to replicate the way the sun is kind of coming out of the clouds in rays. So it's just focusing the eye straight through from that V, up that line, into the sun.
Yeah.
And then we get to the outputting part.
Yeah.
So we get File, Export, and this is where you can do your resizing or your proofing.
Right.
Now what we'll do first is I'll show you a quick way of proofing in screen. If you press the S key in Lightroom, that switches your soft proofing straight on.
Right.
To give you a white background.
Right, that should be on my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You look on here, this section underneath the histogram changes slightly, and it tells you what it's being proofed in. Now, ProPhoto RGB is what Lightroom uses. It's got absolutely massive colour space. So what you'll find that very little gets cropped out. Now, we'll have some clipped off here because I've purposely set some of the darkest shadows to be very dark. But to look at how your colour will actually manifest on other screens or for print. So if I go into here, now all my DS profiles that I've got, I'll click OK, they'll now all be available in here.
Yeah.
So depending on what I'm printing to, so the Crystal Archive I think is the one we used for the exhibition. So I'll click on that, and that simulates paper and ink. So this will basically simulate on your screen how that will actually manifest itself when it prints out.
Right.
So you'll notice there, and it's quick as press S again takes it off. It's not made a massive difference, it's just darkened it down very slightly, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll see when you get your prints back, and they look that little bit darker. And what you can do now with this switched on is you can actually make your edits to compensate for that.
Okay.
So now we could actually scroll down and just tend to find it's literally just a little bit of exposure, just to kind of bring it up without overdoing it. It'll then say, do you want to create a virtual copy for soft proofing? That's what I tend to do. Yeah. So that's now working on a virtual copy of the image. If we press S again, switch it off, what we're finding is that that image is now closer to the original image we saw than when before we did the editing. And again, you can do that on any of your paper types. So you've got the pearl or the actual metallic papers that they offer as well.
Yeah.
If you go back to ProPhoto RGB, which is the inbuilt setting, we can see how it would appear on screen. And it's literally as simple as that. So if you just press S,
and that'll bring that soft proofing on.
That'll bring your soft proofing on. You select your profile.
Yeah.
So as long as you've loaded your profiles that you've...
We'll put this down, so I'll go on this later on. So that's select test. It'll be the same on mine, will it?
It is, yeah.
Select test, and that'll bring up the underneath the thing, yeah.
Underneath,
select what paper you want.
Select your output paper type. If you don't see it there initially, click on other.
Yeah, and it'll be in there.
That'll show all the profiles that you've actually loaded into your profile section on your PC.
Right.
I'll send you a link in the PDF to show you where they will appear in Windows.
Yeah.
Compared to where they appear in Mac, and then from here you can load them in as the ones you want to be able to proof for. So now I can proof for DS Labs paper.
Yeah. Plus all your other, you got loads in there. Yeah.
Plus all the other ones. I mean, some of them are based, and the Canon ones are the one. That's the printer I use. Yeah. So I can profile specifically for that, and I'll see, and then see how it's going to appear based on the Canon printer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Click OK from there. So that's your proof preview.
And you can alter that.
Yeah.
And do your.
And again, if it's kind of lessen the contrast to what you would like to see, you can increase the contrast in that section.
Well, usually it's just a bit of exposure.
Normally, you'll find it's just a little bit of exposure, sometimes a bit of contrast, sometimes a bit of clarity, and just to get that detail back again that you sometimes find you lose.
Yeah.
I mean, the other things you'll sometimes find, you'll notice when you're in the proofing, it kind of separates the colour channels out up here.
Yeah.
So you can see which colour channels.
Can you see the original side by side?
You can. Yeah. So if you click on here, so we go before and after, left and right, and there's very, very little difference in it.
Yeah, minimal.
But it's.
But you could edit it like that with the double view up, so you can do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, right. And then you obviously just save your.
click back to that and it gives you a single screen. And then once you've edited it and you're happy with it, you can then, it's literally just a case of file, export, zoom down. So you change, the only thing you would have to change in here is your output colour space.
Yeah.
And again, you can load them in. So if you send into DS Colour Labs,
yeah,
you load it up and you choose the one that they're going to use for their printer.
In fact, can I grab that up on mine? If that's all right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So a bit of a dim with
It's one of those things that very few of the manufacturers tell you.
Yeah.
So most people they export the pictures given the settings that Lightroom gives you.
Yeah, I've downloaded the things are definitely on there. So if I'm in develop there, so if I wanted to soft proof then.
Yep, you press S.
I'm not saved that yet though. Does that matter or?
No, that's not a problem.
Oh, that's right, S.
Yeah.
So then that's in Adobe.
So that's in Adobe RGB, which has the widest of the older profiles.
All right. Well,
So,
I mean, would you suggest changing that or leaving that as?
Well, I would tend, if you're proofing, if say you send it to DS Colour Labs and they've got their specific profiles, then I'd always change the proof to their profile.
No, what I meant was, is it all right to edit in normally in that colour range?
I mean, what it's editing in, because this is only the proofing, when you're editing in and not in the soft proofing, it's editing in Pro RGB.
All right, okay. No, I wondered if it was actually doing it in that all the time.
No,
in that
no.
form. Oh, right.
No,
So yeah.
So
I
that's
just select
matching your current
my
output.
other, and they should be in there, which they are.
Yeah.
So if I'll do these.
So you could load them all in, and they'll all appear.
Oh, in there. Ah,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, they'll save into that box.
That's right, and then they'll all.
I'll start using them out. So, okay. So they'll be in there.
Yeah, and then once you click that,
right,
they're all available then for
Black
proof.
pearl.
So that's your pearl, which as you can see is perceptibly darker.
So if I wanted to have a look at, that's well. So I could just then. No, it's got the original. Or we'll just have to bump that up a bit still.
You can see what effect it's having. I mean, it'll show you the effect on both, because obviously the original is going to have a.
All right.
But as long as you create a virtual copy, you know you were then working on one that's specifically for editing and printing to a specific output.
Right. Okay. So I'd have to make a virtual copy first then.
Absolutely. I mean, when you start moving it, it gives you the option to make a virtual copy. And it'll make a virtual copy straight from the point
right,
just before you did it.
Yeah, because I'm still editing that, aren't I?
Yes.
So is that why it's not letting me do that?
I mean, if you drag your exposure now,
that'll go up and that will go up, will it? Oh no, it's just that
and you can see the difference it's making. And you can then work that to being closer to
that. But I need to. I'm finished working on that. Yeah.
And once you leave it at the selection, you can create a virtual copy from there. So you'll still have the original, and you'll have the virtual copy as well.
Yeah, and then you just save that once you're happy with that.
Yeah.
So. Right. I'll see.
As I say, when you're editing for a print output, you will always find that if you look at it on screen, it will look a heck of a lot brighter, unless you're soft proofing it, than what you'd actually perceptually want to process it to.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of pressing the S for soft proofing, is it kind of brings the screen image closer to the paper.
Tight, yeah. I'm with you.
And pretty much that will get you within, 3 or 4%.
Yeah, so you can play about with this. So if that was my virtual copy, that was my virtual copy, sorry. Well, which it is it?
Well, that's your original, and that's your proofed one. So if you create the virtual copy, it would create a virtual copy at the proof stage.
At that stage?
Yes. So.
And that's the one you'd work on?
And that's the one you'd then be working on. Then the only thing you'd have to remember to do is when you go to File and Export, is to choose the same colour space. So you'd then export it to the one you've...
Right, hang on, I've not got my head around that one.
It's not easy, is it?
Not for me. Let me go back into Lightroom. So if I've not finished it.
I mean, the easiest way to do it, and what I tend to do.
So that's an edited one, is it? That's one. I don't know.
Is that where you're currently at?
Yeah, that's where I was at that.
Yeah.
So if I was to...
if you right click on that picture at the bottom.
There.
Yeah. You can create a virtual copy straight from this point.
There.
Yeah. So the one it's highlighting now is now the virtual copy.
Which is this one.
So now you can edit that without worry that you're actually affecting the original one. So if you want to produce one for screen and one for print, you can use this virtual one as the print version.
Okay, yeah. Well, if I can press on the S there again.
Yeah.
And that'll be my proof one that I want to set up now for.
Yeah.
So if the one I've just clicked on there, that's my original file then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now to edit this for printing.
Yeah. So you select your paper output.
Yeah.
And then you literally, as you were before, you just remove your sliders. You can use your
to get that looking like that. Is that correct?
You don't have to get it. I mean, it's to get that looking exactly how you want it to appear on paper.
Right.
So you don't have to try and get it to look like that. So you could switch the side-by-side view off.
Yeah, and have a play, see what I think.
Yeah,
I'd like to have it somewhat like that,
yes.
So I could play with that, and then we'll have to save that once that's done.
And then all you would do, once you've done that, you just go to File, Export.
Yeah.
And what I would normally do then is call it Poppy's Print.
Or print, yeah.
Yeah. And this is when you have to remember to choose the same colour space.
Okay, so I'd have to, so if I was happy with that as is, File, Export, put that print, Is that right?
Yeah. It's literally just a titling system which works for you. So scroll down, that's it.
Scroll down, my paper. So JPEG's right, quality's up.
So
I've got them in there.
Yeah, and this
I got it on the Pearl, or was it on the Criticon? I think it was
on the Pearl, yeah.
So Pearl there.
Yeah,
right. So
and basically that tells...
And then once I press export, I've also done Recite Export, and that can go back to my Nikon D300S folder.
That's right, yeah, and that'll export it to wherever you tell it to go.
Right, so I have to make a copy of the original, and then do the soft proof.
Yes.
Original, soft proof, and then save the change soft proof.
Yeah.
So there's basically 3 images then.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
In effect, you've got the original.
So in my folder, there'll be 3. There'll be original. Will there be the soft proof image? Well, no, because I've made a soft proof.
Yeah.
Right.
No, basically, the only one. What you'll have is you'll have the original one you brought in.
Yeah.
If you've spat out into Photoshop or Elements, it creates a copy. So it'll have TIFF Edit 1, TIFF Edit 2. So you'll have those sequential ones. But your output file will be named, as you just named it, Poppy Blow Print.
Print, yeah.
You'll literally have one under the print setting.
Under the print, yeah.
And that'll get. So then you could go back to your original one. So you could switch your soft proofing off and go to the original file and process it for screen.
Right. See, what I'm thinking is, when I say uploaded something onto my final image will end up on my hard drive in the D300S folder, and I'll put one up on Flickr. If I wanted to get that printed, I would have to drag that. I'd have to drag or import that back into Lightroom, wouldn't it, off my hard drive? No,
you can. Do you keep all your images in? So all your edits are in Lightroom all the time?
No.
Or do you just reload your images in on a session by session basis?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to then create a
one for printing, I'd import it back into Lightroom.
Yeah. And then apply your proofing.
And a soft proof.
Yeah.
Adjust accordingly, then save that.
Yeah.
And I can do it that way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, right, that's great, yeah. I've got that now.
Yeah, so it just takes the more and more you do it, you'll find it just becomes second nature. Because what I tend to do is that I know what types of paper I use to print on all the time.
Yeah.
And if I know there's a likelihood I'm going to print it, I tend to create my screen version and my print version.
Yeah.
Within the same session, so I'll create my screen output, and I'll switch soft proof on, and I'll make the edits to make the soft proof as close to the screen version.
Yeah.
As I wanted, and then I'll export it with the paper profile, and I'll do them both at the same time. But it can become data hungry, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
You could end up with absolute.
Do you want another drink, Rob? In fact, I might just take the.
You can do, yeah. And the other thing you can do from here, and I think this is what Pete helped you with last time.
Yeah,
which is the resizing.
Yeah.
And it tends to come under image sizing here. Resize to fit. Now, have you ever been a member of a camera club?
No.
You've probably not missed anything because you can get seriously frustrated at them. But they tend to, when they have their competitions, the software that they use to show all the images on screen has very particular settings.
Right.
And like a long edge will have to be a certain size. And when we sent the stuff to DS Colour, the long edge I think was it 5940 or 4950?
4950.
4950.
I've got them on here actually.
Yeah. And this is where it's as simple as that. Is you literally click resize to fit. I don't worry about doing all the edges.
Just the long edge.
I just click the long edge. And I just change it to 4950. Keep my resolution as high as possible.
300, yeah.
Click export, and what that will do then is it'll export it at that size, specific to what the manufacturer or the printer or whoever's asked you for.
So there is only, mind you, that's only got the one box on, hasn't it?
What's that?
Yeah, mine's got the two boxes.
Yeah, I mean if you click width and height, and then change it to long edge.
And that's all you have to worry about. Because
it'll do the rest proportionally. So it won't kind of make your long edge 4950 and your short edge will stay the same. It literally maintains your exact proportions that your image is currently in.
All right.
And it stretches the long edge or shrinks the long edge to 4950.
What, to suit the...
And the small one will go down by proportionally the same amount.
Right.
So if you were, say... If you were at a camera club competition and they were using Image Comp as their software, the image long edge size on there is 1024, and a raw file comes in probably nearer to the 4950 to start with. So literally all you put in there is one.
And that's A3 size, isn't it, for that?
Give or take.
I did get all the sizes here. I've saved it. Where was it? It's down in the documents. Not much in my photography folder. They've gone all there, one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, A3. Yeah, 4.9. I don't know why it's got it back to front.
Yeah, it's giving you the other edge. And basically,
if I was doing a square though, would I have to type in both, or
if you're doing a square again, you could. Basically what we did is, so if you crop your image on here, so say we'll come out of it, I'll give you an example. So say I decided at this I actually wanted a square crop.
Square, yeah.
So you click on your crop tool. The easiest way to do a square is to go to 1:1.
Ah, right, yeah.
Brings that up. Then all you do is literally move that to the push. Now set kind of in here there's almost kind of two images. There's one that includes the sky. And if I wanted to do a square with just a bit of water and a bit of glow, I could perhaps choose that.
Yeah.
Double tap, and that crops it straight square for you there. Now, when we spit it out to a printout to go to DS Colour Labs, again, as long as you set your long edge to match the paper, what it will do when it prints out is it will print your longish edge say again, longest edge appropriately. So again, if you're looking at a square image, you put 3600 in, it'll do the other edge for you proportionally.
Yeah.
Because it already knows the image is square, so we can tell.
So there's really no need to put the second.
So you don't. Yeah, absolutely. The only time you'd ever use both is if.
Because does it change the dimensions if you put both in?
If you put both in on a square image and put different values in, it would obviously change your dimensions of your image.
Yeah. No, I mean it's only A3. If you did put your.
If you put both in, it would change. That's an optimized image. So basically, if you got an image that you'd made letterbox format,
right?
So you got a panoramic.
Panoramic, yeah.
And you wanted it to fit on the A3 paper. You change your long edge to 4950. But if you put the other setting in, the 30, I can't see if you're looking, 3510. Yeah. What it would probably then do is make your image look really out of proportion because it's stretching.
Oh, right.
Whereas if you just set the long edge and allow it to actually do the rest proportionately to the original image that you've got.
Right, so it'll judge it itself and say, right, that's how long edge and this is.
Yeah.
Sorry, that bloody doors.
And I think that's where the confusion comes with using Lightroom to crop.
So it is as easy as that then. Put that whatever size I want to do. If I want to do a 20 by 16, is put your 6,000 in.
That's right, yeah. As long as you've got it set on long edge, Lightroom will do the rest for you. It'll resize the short edge proportionally to what the difference between the long and the short are already.
Right.
So you won't see any image stretching or.
So A3, a good printing size, popular print size. I think I had some done which were, I don't know if it was 18 by 12.
Yeah, I've done some 18 by 12.
Was it 16? It might have been 16.
Yeah, I've done some. I mean, it depends obviously on what you're looking at as an
So I think I had about half a dozen because Karen's sister wanted a couple, and I thought, well, I'll get some done, see how they come out. But that was it's been nearly 2 years ago. Obviously, didn't resize or anything, but yeah, it's not very difficult at all, is it?
That's right. There you go. I've literally just edit undo twice, and I've got back to my original image. And the beauty of Lightroom is I could export it at that. I could export it
cropped, everything, yeah.
And it's.
See, I'm still cropping in elements. I think I've got to get away from that and do everything in Lightroom. I know you can flip them about a bit, but.
I mean, the obviously the thing if you crop in elements is it's what they call destructive. Is that it actually crops the picture down to that.
Yeah.
And you've not got the state to go back to. If you do it in Lightroom.
Yeah, you can just.
You can crop and you can edit.
And it's always there as that.
The good panel to always use.
History, yeah.
If your history, you can actually scroll down your history.
Yeah, I've seen that come up. Yeah, you can go back to that point, can't you?
And you can work on various presets. So if I redo my crop, it then appears on here. But if I just want to go back to my proof mode, literally just to click through your history. So anything you do, you can step backward through.
Step backwards
quite easily.
Well. Oh, that's good. So it's as easy as that on the printing front. Select your paper type and put in your long edge in the box.
Absolutely.
Save.
Yeah, as long as you put it set to long edge, it will do everything else for you. It will simplify it all for you.
And would it be the same if you had your own printer?
Absolutely. As long as you know what size you're printing to. So if you go into A3, you set your A3 size.
How reliable are these printers? Do they need any maintenance? Are they,
Yeah, the one thing I find with owning my own printer is it costs more purely because you have to keep printing more to stop the heads clogging up. If you don't print very frequently,
they will clog.
They clog up and you end up having to run your cleaning process on your computer for your management software for the printer. So it spits loads of ink through that you just don't use.
Oh.
And you then think, well, actually, would I have been better sending it somewhere?
I know, this is my big thing. My other half says to me, she says, if you get one of these printers, you're not very thingy-minded with it like that, and if it's not going right and it breaks down.
I mean, they sometimes do. I mean,
yeah, well, nature of the beast.
They will, like any mechanical or electronic equipment, you get issues with things locking up. You do find, as long as you use them regularly and keep them ticking over, you'll get a good 3-4 years out of them, solid use.
It's not bad, is it?
Which is, if you think, what's an A3 printer of a reasonable standard, you're looking at £300, I think, 289, 300.
Yeah.
So, about £100 a year. And as long as you work through your ink regularly, it's not costing too much.
No.
So it's not a bad return on your investment.
No.
But if you don't print enough to warrant it, then
probably not. Yeah.
Maybe.
So they're better off probably selling to DX.
Which is why I've not really gone out to buy my own A3 printer, because I just don't. The good thing, DS will you can they don't even have to ship to you, so you can ship direct to a client.
Yeah.
So as long as I've nailed everything on here and I've proofed it for the paper, I'm pretty much.
Yeah, and you're happy with what you're seeing on your proof.
Yeah, and you've had your screen calibrated, so you know what you're seeing is faithful to those proofings.
Yeah. As well. It was a huge change as well. I mean, it prompted me this morning actually. I'm honest, I'd probably do it later. I've been doing it every fortnight, and I probably don't need it every fortnight.
You probably find about once every 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. Need to do it.
Depends on the age of the monitor.
I thought, Christ, that looks really dark to me.
Yeah, I mean they are. They're naturally very bright.
Yeah.
And it's purely the way they're set up, and they get darker through age. So the old, once they get over about 3 years old,
it's best to upgrade.
Then it's
that'd do for one.
I mean, thankfully, the Mac screens are pretty good. I'll say, I mean, back in the studio at home, I've got a Windows desktop.
Yeah.
With a sort of 24-inch
monitor,
pair of monitors, and so this is my mobile choice.
Yeah.
So I only tend to.
Do you find it difficult using the two systems, or?
Not so much. No, it was kind of more prompted by that. I hadn't used my Mac for about 2 years, and then we were just about to go to Patchins, and the Windows laptop died.
Oh.
So it was like reteach myself Mac OS in about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I mean, this has been one of the things I've been trying to teach our academics, who, is not to fear it.
Yeah.
Because, ultimately there's not a great deal of difference between the two operating systems.
No.
But, so I'll flick back. So in terms of, we've started off, we've brought the image in, we've done the editing.
Yeah.
We've soft proofed it, we've cropped it, we've exported it for various paper types. Is there anything else you want me to show you on here?
No, I think
I think the best thing from then is really if we spend the next sort of we got hour and 20 minutes of the workshop is you have a go, and again we bounce any of the questions back and forwards, and to get in the practical process and actually allow
you can do one from start to finish.